And if you thought Killswitch Engage was a bullshit live experience, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe, that is Dan, that is Jeff, and we're talking about Demon Hunter tonight.
Demon Hunter.
Demon Hunter! AKA Dan's favorite metalcore band.
Oh. Well, we just got this shit off on the wrong foot.
What can I say? I was trying to get myself ahead of the curve.
That'll be nice for the first couple records. Mostly.
Shout out to Derek Solberg. You asked for it. You're getting it. Demon Hunter.
You are getting it. Probably one of the most requested episodes we've had on Discography Discussion besides Kiss. But, good luck that ever happening.
Well, I mean, if we have Josh Toomey on, maybe
whatever, dude. We're getting Chris from Decibel Geek on for that.
Yeah. And we're just going to let him run the entire
We'll let him run the whole thing. I won't even be allowed to talk.
It won't be necessary. We'll just let him do characters.
Well. Shout out to Decibel Geek. So, Demon Hunter, which is what I'm going to refer to them as.
Hunter.
Demon Hunter is a metalcore, new metal-ish band that appeared on Solid State Records sometime around 2002. I don't remember the exact moment it came out. I just remember seeing a video of a guy that was bald with a huge beard cutting a tree on a music video with a knife. And I was like, that's not really an effective tool to do that with, but he seemed like a really intense guy, so I went ahead and let it go.
You later discovered it was Ryan Clark from Training for Utopia.
Right. So there were two guys that formed Demon Hunter. That would be Ryan Clark and Don Clark. These two had been in a band called Training for Utopia back in the late 90s, early 2000s, really more like 1999, 2000. Had two records out. They were a badass, like, noisecore, spazcore kind of band. Spazcore, hashtag. And so when Demon Hunter came out, initially we didn't know who was in the band. They were doing this whole weird gimmick thing where they weren't telling anybody who the band members were. All you had were promo shots. Now, if you're into Christian metalcore like I am, I could tell you, well, I didn't recognize Ryan Clark because he looks different than he did in Training for Utopia. But a couple of the other guys I did recognize. And one guy was from the band Embodiment, which we've already talked about on the show. And just a couple of they were basically a Christian metalcore supergroup is how they started, because they had all these guys from different Christian metalcore bands in it. But because those bands all sounded so different than Demon Hunter, they wanted to not have people compare what they did in their old bands to Demon Hunter, which is probably a good thing. So in 2002, the self-titled album Demon Hunter drops, and we will get into it, but we have some Patreon shout-outs.
But before we start talking about where it grows, I want to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, so if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening. And now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
We love 5-star reviews here on Discography Discussion. And let me tell you, we've received a few of them. We are actually running a contest right now. If we get 10 reviews within the next 4 weeks, we're looking at doing a cover of a cover song, and you'll get all 3 of our interpretations of said cover song. The song is going to be Faith, which was repopularized by the band Limp Bizkit in the late 90s. And there's also a George Michael version, which it's based on. And I think that Jeff's going to take the George Michael approach. I'm going to take the Fred Durst approach, and we'll see if we can meet in the middle on that.
What about Joe?
Joe, total mystery.
I do what I want.
He's going to take a Ryan Clark approach.
I can do that. You want me to do the Ryan Clark or the Tobias Forge?
I was going to say, no, you should do the Ryan Clark.
He should do it in the style of Ghost.
No, he needs to do Ryan Clark, so whenever he sucks, it's not a big surprise.
I guess it would
just
be nice.
Yeah,
So-
no.
oh, man. I'm loving it.
I'm not exactly sure how this is a contest. I mean, the only winner is either us or the audience. I guess it's everybody because we get 10 reviews and you get a cover song.
Well, you wonder why podcasts ask for reviews all the time. And the reason for it is that it's all about searchability these days. All websites, including, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, everybody goes off of kind of a algorithm. And you have a higher chance of showing up in that algorithm if you have more reviews. If more people have heard you and have something to say about your product, then you're more likely to show up in those search results when you're searching for like a metal podcast. So that's why we ask for it. It's not because we get paid for that. We just need those reviews in order to get more visibility is the only reason we ask. But if you like us, leave us a 5-star review. If you don't like us, let us know. And this month we want to shout out our loyal patrons. We have Alex, who is our most recent patron. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you, Jeffrey Santos. You are the man. Thank you, David Cassidy. We love you guys, all three equally. Alexander, thanks for joining, man. We appreciate your patronage more than you will ever know. Hopefully that wasn't creepy. That was creepy. Oh, well.
We like creepy.
And if you become a patron for $1 or more, you will get access to an exclusive feed of album reviews and other stuff. We're not exactly sure what the other stuff is yet, but we're working on it.
Well, we'll get there, man. I don't know. Talking about that ever-flowing stream, man, that was a ton of fun. I couldn't shut up about that record.
It's because it was a good record.
It really was. So,
especially the vocals. Vocals were sick.
Yes, they were.
So, Dan, tell me about Demon Hunter.
Demon Hunter, 2002, dropped a self-titled album, and I didn't know what to make of this at first because it was metalcore, kind of. It was new metal, kind of. It was an interesting blend of those two styles, something I hadn't really heard before and haven't really heard as much of since, unless you're talking about just Demon Hunter. What they were laying down were aggressive songs that were mostly screamed with this. One of the first things I noticed is, wow, but this guy can actually belt out a chorus too. He can sing pretty well. He's a pretty good singer. I'm not going to say he's the best singer out there, but what he did on this first record was perfectly adequate, and I didn't have a problem with it.
No, the first album is the start of the downhill ride, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the first Demon Hunter album. I think the songs are aggressive. I think the song Infected was a really good single. It's catchy, it gets stuck in your head. And I thought Ryan Clark here had a really intense vocal delivery that I think is unique to this record. I think he sounds a lot more fierce out of the gate. And I don't know if this is just because of the way it was recorded, but the actual heaviness of the band really shines through a lot more on this record. And I think the reason for that is just that these were guys that had come predominantly from a metalcore scene. So you're still getting a little bit of those influences from what these guys were laying down before. And Ryan and Don Clark from Training for Utopia, they were in a band that really didn't have that well-structured of songs. I mean, that was the whole point, is that their old band was pure chaos. And you actually get a little bit of that on this record because some of the song structures are just weird, and they're not as predictable as they would become. I mean, on the singles, you have a pretty predictable sound. On Infected, it's very verse, chorus, verse. Through the Black is very verse, chorus, verse. But I think a good majority of these songs kind of have weird interludes towards the end. There's some weird drops that take place. And there's even a weird interlude track where there's just horses.
I remember the first time I heard Demon Hunter, it was incorrectly sold to me as a Christian alternative to Slipknot. After listening to the record, I said, well, yeah, I mean, the vocals maybe. But the band as a whole, no, this was something different. It was heavy, but it had structure. It was metalcore, but it wasn't. It was metal with a hard rock sensibility.
Well, and I don't want to undersell this either because
it's a damn good record. I enjoy the hell out of it.
It really is. And one of the reasons for it is that this is still Christian music. The band was always very clear. I mean, they're called Demon Hunter. Their cover artwork has a demon skull with a bullet hole through the center of it. Pretty clear where these guys stand on that side of things. But back in 2002, Christian metal, especially in underground, this is before As I Lay Dying broke. This is before a lot of the bands that got popular, either they hadn't broke yet or they were about to break, you know. And I think the weird thing about Demon Hunter was that in Christian music, you didn't have bands that were in that middle ground between hyper underground, because back in 2002, you either sounded like Zao or you sounded like Living Sacrifice. You were always super, super, super heavy, or you sounded like Skillet. You know what I mean? There was no crossbreeding like you get with Demon Hunter. So I think this is one of the first Christian metal albums, besides maybe like Stryper in the 80s or POD in the late 90s, that really connected with people in the sense that, like, I'm getting this heavy music with the screamed vocals that I like. But I don't think that the other bands in that genre at the time had the commercial appeal that Demon Hunter had, and they had that out of the gate.
Yeah, they helped bridge the gap.
It's very obvious that this was a very intentional choice on part of not only the band members but of Solid State Records, who put this out, because everything else on Solid State at the time that was metal was really, really heavy. And so this was probably their first real dip into the more commercial stuff, because this is pre Chasing Safety Under Oath, which Solid State found more success, I think, with the whole Screamo thing that blew up after that. So I think this is just an early attempt of how do we merge mainstream rock with our metalcore stuff that we're doing. And I think on this record it worked. You know, notable songs, Through the Black, Infected. I really like Turn Your Back and Run. I even like My Throat is an Open Grave, which was just a slower song. And I thought, again, that Ryan Clark sounded good. It didn't have a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about later in it. And it was just it was played straight. And it worked really well. And I liked the closing track, The Gauntlet. I like almost all the songs on this record. I don't really have one that's a favorite necessarily. I go back and forth between whether or not Through the Black or Infected is a better single.
For me, it's Infected.
Infected's the better single for you?
Yeah, the Gauntlet was just a little too slow for me.
Oh, did I say The Gauntlet? I meant Through the Black.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, you mentioned that The Gauntlet was another one that you liked, and
yeah.
I was just saying that I didn't particularly care for it. It was just a little too slow for me. That was all.
I gotcha. I thought it was a good lead-off towards the end. I think this is probably the most aggressive Demon Hunter album from beginning to end.
More than True Defiance?
We'll get to that.
Yeah, that was something that I had mentioned to Dan about 15 minutes before we started the podcast. So, yeah, when we get there, I'll have something to say on that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this sounded great for what it was. I think even now the production quality sounds good. When I'm listening to it on my speaker at home, I mean, it beats my ass sometimes. Not as much as like a Cephalic Carnage would, but, you know, they're not death grind, so it's not fair.
It's no longer Nu Metal May, so we don't have to... Well, no, we're still going to listen to Death Grind. That's just the way it is.
That's the new norm. So
it is.
Look out for that. Second half of 2018, all Death Grind. But
please no.
What we're gonna do stuff like Demon Hunter to keep the kids listening, which I think was the whole point of Demon Hunter, right?
It is.
We got to give the kids something good to listen to.
I still think this makes your Christian parents unnerved a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Your Christian parents did not accept the screaming vocals, I guarantee.
No, and the screaming vocals are harder to distinguish on this record. And they have more piss and vinegar to them than they did. And I liked that the lyrics were a little bit more broad. Like they were a Christian band, no doubt, but this wasn't like this wasn't like blatantly obvious. They weren't like Jesus has delivered me from, whatever. And like this was like more obscure biblical references and things, and just lyrics that made you think. They were for a general audience. And so I think it's weird how they started off as kind of a more vague lyric band, and vague is the greatest word to describe this record, because you didn't know, unless you did know somehow, who was on it.
Right. Well, you kind of had an inkling, and I'm sure there was other people that were hardcore like you that were able to figure some of that stuff out. But no, I actually like you said that it's a little more ambiguous and open to interpretation. I think that actually serves their purpose better.
Well, and I think they had kind of a little bit of an acceptance in the mainstream metal scene because, again, like I said, metalcore starting to take off in 2002. I mean, by 2003, I'm starting to see Demon Hunter show up on Headbangers Ball compilations and stuff, and I would have never expected that. In a perfect world, bands like Living Sacrifice should have been the ones that were on those compilations.
Absolutely.
But for whatever reason, Demon Hunter was the band that had the commercial sound, and they could appeal to a very large audience. So it wasn't very long after they released the self-titled that they put out a second album called Summer of Darkness.
This has got my favorite jam on it from them.
Oh, Beheaded?
Oh, hell yeah. Beheaded is just beastly.
Well, following in the footsteps of it being a super group like it was in the first record, this record has a whole lot of guest appearances. Most notably, you had Howard Jones of Killswitch Engage at the time was on this record. Mike Williams from the Agony scene was on the song Beheaded. Brock Lindau from 36 Crazy Fists was on, I think it was Beauty Through the Eyes of a Predator was the one he was on.
Very, very, very well done, sir.
And we also had the guy from, I don't remember his name, the guy from 1,000 Foot Crutch, which I thought was a weird addition. And we'll get to that song a little bit later. But, they're just, this album had guest appearances all over the place. And it was kind of like celebratory. Like, it was a big deal that Demon Hunter was putting out another album because the first one was so successful.
The name you were thinking of was Trevor McNevin.
Okay. And, but I mean, it was kind of a big deal that they were coming out with another record. And this is when the whole image of the band thing kind of started. One of the biggest key components to Demon Hunter's whole deal is their image, how they're portrayed. Now, even on this record, we still didn't know who was in the band. I think there may have been some lineup changes between, but I think largely the lineup on the first record was the same lineup as the second record.
Did we know at this point that the record was basically the Clark brothers in the studio for a couple months? Or did that come up later?
I don't know. My understanding is that it was the same band. And the only thing at that time that I would have known the Clark brothers for was they did a CD design, or they ran an art studio called Asterisk Studio. And they did a lot of, like, if you listen to metalcore in the early 2000s, more than likely you've seen these guys' artwork all over all the bands that came out, Christian or non. They did it all. And that's all I knew them from. So I didn't really associate them with Demon Hunter right away. But this record was interesting in the image of the band because it's got the demon skull on the front of it, just like the first record. But this time it's an actual skull, like a picture. And there's like all these pictures in the liner notes of like all the dudes in the band like driving around in a hearse, digging fucking holes in the ground. Like it created this atmosphere of like, holy shit, these guys are like really serious about this whole demon hunting thing. Like this is this was different and it was kind of fun back then.
Yeah. I gotta make a Poor Old Lou reference. Because the Sprinkle Brothers were
go for
part of this. And, of course, somebody who did some guest vocals for Poor Old Lou was Jeremy Enoch from Sunny Day Real Estate.
Oh, yeah.
I had to get that in.
Slipped it in, didn't you,
Take a drink.
Sorry, couldn't help myself.
So, this record, the first thing I noticed whenever I heard Not Ready to Die, which was the opening track on this record, was that the vocals were different. They were aggressive. They still had a little bit of that piss and vinegar, but it was like 25% less than what we'd had on the previous album. And I think part of that had to do just with recording techniques and production and all of that. But it kind of went from like where it was a scream on the first record, and now it's a gruff talking kind of vocal. And it wasn't enough of a difference for me to be like, okay, they've gone in a different direction. But it is notable for what we're going to talk about later. And I noticed that the production on the clean vocals was like 100 times what it had been on the first Demon Hunter album. They were all about selling us those clean vocals on this record. They really were. because now you have choruses that are much more lofty and like up in the sky than what you'd had on the first record, which was a little bit more straight ahead.
For the most part, Demon Hunter is a band at this stage in their career, and it gets better or worse depending on how you look at it. They follow the stereotype. They give the clean vocals and the screamed, growled, heavy vocals equal time. It's almost intentional. Every single song is, here's the heavy, here's the scream, now here's the sing. Here's the scream, here's the sing. They are the trope. We make fun of bands by saying, well, it's not as heavy as Demon Hunter, because that's us saying, yeah, if you give equal time to your melody and your screaming on every single song, it doesn't really mean anything.
But see, it's done in such a basic pedestrian way here. And that's the only thing I don't like about this record is
very
that
formulaic.
It is.
Yeah, and I think it makes Beheaded stand out all the more so for it. And I think that's why it might be part of the reason why it's one of my favorite tracks is because it is it's kind of like the thorn on the rose bush. I mean, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Well, and with a guest vocalist like Mike Williams from the Agony Scene, who's a significantly more brutal band than Demon Hunter, they kind of had to go in that direction. I think they were maybe just trying to impress him a little bit, which I'm sure he was probably like, I don't know what I just did here. But, it was really strange to hear how different the band sounded between the two albums. And I think, obviously, this is the difference between Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 in the sense of, like, okay, here we had a budget. So it's going to come through a lot clearer and a lot bigger sounding than it ever had before. And I can tell you, I loved Not Ready to Die. I actually heard a little bit of a Project 86 influence vocally on this one, on Not Ready to Die, where he's like, we take our voices with our hands, we make like knives, we make demands, it's very Schwab, and I thought that was cool. But then they went into this song called Awakening, and that was the first time where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be into this band for the long haul, because that song is boring as fuck. I mean, it just goes on forever. I don't find the hook to be that good. I don't find it to be that entertaining. And I'm just not into the riff progression at all. Like, I don't like how it starts off with the chorus. Like, what the fuck, guys? You're going to start with the fucking chorus? Like, really?
They're trying to be edgy.
I guess, but it did not connect with me. So Beheaded is actually the song that saved it for me. Because, you skip. Because, I get about halfway through Awakening, and I skip to the next track, and I get Beheaded, and I'm happy. I'm in my happy place. And, that song kicks ass. Beheaded 100%. I mean, that's probably one of the strongest Demon Hunter songs to ever come out. And that's considering the rest of their discography.
Was Demon Hunter actually as big as people said they were? I was trying to save this for Storm the Gates of Hell, but I remember this perception that Demon Hunter was this huge band. It was this huge deal. And then I listened to the record, and yeah, it's good. I like it. I'm sure somebody would say it's catchy, but every single song was almost like an experiment. What's going to stick? And they weren't as big of a band as a lot of people said they were, in my eyes. You can't have that many guest appearances on your album and be a major player. You're trying to appeal to a lot of people if you can't do it yourself on your second album.
I don't think that it was because they couldn't do it themselves. I think what it was that they were key players behind the scenes. Like, we didn't know who they were, but these guys are designing all these bands' cover artwork, so they've already got this relationship with the Clark brothers, and they're like, hey, we're going to do another Demon Hunter record. You want to be on it? I think this was to create an appearance that the band was bigger and had more connections maybe than they really did. I mean, I think they definitely had the connections, but I think this was made to make it look bigger because it was all hype at this point. I don't think Demon Hunter was necessarily a huge band yet when this came out, but one of the biggest catches is that Demon Hunter didn't tour 365 days a year. So they would do like a 3-month tour in the summer, and then that was the Summer of Darkness tour. And it was all hype leading up to that. It was hype, like do the hype machine. Because I don't remember them doing that many tours on the first album. I mean, I'm sure they did a couple, but it wasn't a big thing because these guys had full-time jobs. I think Demon Hunter was very much not the priority in their lives when they started the project. And then I think Solid State was like, holy shit, it prints money, you know? Because that was their unofficial name for a while, was Money Hunter. And that's interesting on this record because I think this is, like Joe said, there's a lot of experimentation here, but not for art's sake. I think that the experimentation was, we're going to throw a bunch of shit at the wall and whatever sticks, that's what we're going to sound like. Like from now on.
Yeah, unfortunately, Beheaded is not what stuck.
Think about the first record. What was the big single? Infected.
Right.
So what does Summer of Darkness sound like? A whole lot of Infected.
A whole lot of songs like that. And, you know, I really didn't... I didn't care much for their first single, which was Heartstrings, I believe. When My Heartstrings Come Undone was the first slow song on the record, conveniently placed at track 4, just like on the first album. And that song really kind of bothered me because it was just so lame sounding. Because like the slower songs on the first album were dark and broody. This was just like radio shit for me. And it's always a skip. Every time I listen to this album, it's a skip. And the reason for it is that this was like the Christian rock radio single that they needed to propel them into what they are today. You know, because they started getting, and I remember seeing on YouTube in the early days of YouTube, seeing like entire school bands covering Heartstrings. Like it became this huge phenomenon, and I couldn't figure out why. And I guess because outside of Skillet, you didn't really have bands in Christian rock that were putting out power singles like this. And I mean, it serves its purpose, but I personally can't stand it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it either. It was on Resident Evil as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and can I ask why?
Well, because
Do you think
when your
about
heartstrings come undone, you end up in the Nemesis program.
I guess. I mean, My Plague was by Slipknot was on the first Resident Evil soundtrack, and that was much more fitting of a song. But what the fuck do I know?
Here, Dan, I'm gonna make it better for you. You ready? 3, 2, 1.
There you go. But you know, that one is always a skip. So this is where it kind of starts going downhill for me, because the first album, there's not that many skips. I skipped the Horsey song. Sometimes I skip Throat as an Open Grave if I just want to keep the momentum going. But it's a pretty fast, energetic album on the first one. This album is all over the fucking place as far as my emotions go when I'm listening to it. And Heartstrings just didn't do it. It didn't pull on my heartstrings, so to speak. And I just didn't enjoy it. And I started realizing when I'm listening to it that this guy, this lead singer, thinks that he is a better singer than he really is. Like, that's the first hint that, like, either he thinks he's the best vocalist in this genre right now, or all of his friends are telling him that he is. I'm not sure which one is true.
After the next record came out, The Triptych, 2005, arguably my favorite album by this band, I would definitely say he had a lot of people telling him he was. I remember reading a bunch of bullshit about being in the studio and having to record vocals a certain way because he wasn't comfortable. And the vocal major in me popped up and said, if you're not comfortable performing, you're not doing it right. That's all I had to say.
Well, and just to finish up on Summer of Darkness, I thought that the song with Howard Jones on it was really good. I think that one's called Our Faces Fall Apart. That one was good because there's no denying Howard Jones. The only thing that bothered me about that was that he didn't scream on it, or if he did, it was very low-key. I don't remember hearing him too much on that record, on that song. And then, you know, we kind of go into a series of tracks that are pretty good. The title track, Summer of Darkness, is pretty good. I mean, they really didn't screw up on the rest of this record too much. I thought that the song, I think is it Coffin Builder with Trevor from Thousand Foot Crutch?
Yes, that is correct.
And that song, it's kind of, his guest vocal's a little out of place for me because he's doing his like, Thousand Foot Crutch was a band that was past their expiration date when they got popular. And so, my wife would kill me. She loves that band. But, you know, just hearing this Demon Hunter song, like, because even by Demon Hunter standards, Thousand Foot Crutch would be a kind of a weak band in the sense that, he comes in and he starts doing this weird, like, white boy rap thing. He's like, and every day I feel that this weight's constantly dragging me down. And I'm like, this doesn't even fit on a super commercial Demon Hunter album. Like, this is just out of place. But a special mention has to be the song The Latest and the Last, the final track on the record. And this record's long. There's 15 songs on this record. That is really long. That's a lot of experimentation. That's a lot to get through. And I definitely I thought that song had the strongest chorus and had the strongest verses. And I think that it sounds the most like the Demon Hunter that was on the last record. I don't know if it was the first song they wrote in the session or what, but I really love Latest and the Last, and I like Not Ready to Die, and I like Beheaded. And that's about it. There's also another song that I hate on this record called Everything Was White. The chorus on that is just, it does not hit at all. And that's pretty much how I feel about Summer of Darkness. I mean, I think it was still basically good, but there's definitely some questionable things on it that become a little bit more apparent as we go on.
So what's next, Joe?
2005, The Triptych. You know you love it.
Do I?
Joe, do you love it?
It's my favorite Demon Hunter album.
Why is that, Joe?
I don't really have a reason other than the negatives on this do not outweigh the positives as much as they do on the other records.
You don't think so?
I really don't. There's not reliance on guest vocalists, and I'm not assuming that they relied on that to build them up, but the band is presented as being a little more concise and a little more put together than they actually were. When all you're doing is hanging out in the studio writing songs, your record sounds like a bunch of songs thrown together. Demon Hunter is a greatest hits band. They're one of the bands that you can just make a playlist of them, and everything kind of goes together. And before we got to True Defiance, Demon Hunter had that formula. Remember what I said earlier about 50-50 on the clean vocals and the screaming. So if all I have to go on is these 4 records of songs, the one that has the most songs that I like, the one that I listen to the most is The Triptych.
Yeah, well, you kind of hit on why I have a problem with this band. For the most part, they'll have like,
bitch, we got a problem.
Yeah, 1, 2, or 3 decent songs per album. You can make a fantastic playlist of their songs. But that's
so why couldn't they?
Yeah, well, that's kind of my point. I mean, last week we talked about Gojira and how fantastic that is. You know, you don't want to skip. And on this, Demon Hunter, I am actively skipping because I'm 30, 40 seconds into a song. I'm like, okay,
next.
I've heard this shit. Next. Oh, wait.
Well, it's Demon Hunter. You've heard it, I promise.
That's my point, and it's a major problem I have with this band. And if it isn't something that it sounds like exactly that they've done before, it sounds like exactly like somebody else has done before. It's formulaic, it's boring, and I don't have time for that shit.
It's like beating a dead horse, except the horse is made of concrete, and you have twigs.
Well, let's talk about hype for a minute.
The hype machine!
As I said, the first 2 Demon Hunter albums could not have been better received. The masses loved them some Demon Hunter.
Tell us about the masses,
especially your Christian masses that were into heavy metal, but maybe not that into heavy metal. And so Demon Hunter was introducing kids to heavy music, which I guess is the whole point. And they did fine with that for the first 2 albums. And then they had a bit of a lineup change on this record. And this is whenever they kind of came out. They're like, yes, I'm Ryan Clark, I'm Dan Clark, they kind of revealed what was under the hood because they had member changes, and I guess they felt that they needed to announce those. But this is whenever we kind of got a picture of like who these guys are,
Yeah, this is what the first album that Jesse Sprinkle's not drumming. I know that much.
Yeah, that's Yogi Watts' drumming, who actually used to play drums in a kind of a hard rock band called Holland that was on Tooth and Nail Records. And this record doesn't sound as different as it should, considering that they have different guitarists, different drummer, But they hyped this album up because, again, they only did a couple of tours on Summer of Darkness, maybe only one. And then they're talking about this new record. And one of the things that they said that caught my ear, that got me a little excited about it, is they said, look, we've done the metalcore thing, we've done the new metal thing, but this record, The Triptych, is going to be our best record yet because we are returning to our metal roots. And we are going to be showcasing a diverse set of influences from traditional metal on this album, which was just a bunch of bullshit. Because
Salesman 101.
That is not the case at all. No, because if you're a salesman, you want to mix a little bit of shit. You want to mix a little bit of truth in with the shit. They didn't even do that.
This is just all shit.
This is more formulaic. This is formulaic as fuck, and they're 3 albums into their career, and they're already borrowing shit from their previous albums, like straight lifts. Like the beginning of Not I, the vocal pattern is a direct lift from Beheaded, which should be a good thing, but they fucking ruin it with the clean vocals. Like they're experimenting a little bit with the clean vocals here, but like. Number one, Ryan Clark sounds like 25% as aggressive as he did on the first Demon Hunter album on this. This is no longer a screaming vocalist. This is a vocalist that talks gruffly. And that is his metal voice.
I also forgot to mention it earlier. This is the Ryan Clark sound.
It's a little pukey. Like it just doesn't connect because it doesn't really sound aggressive, but we are meant to think that it does. And it just doesn't. That's the first thing I noticed. And then you cut into the opening verses of Undying, and it's a direct fucking lift of the vocal pattern on Beheaded, but slower. And how nobody else has ever noticed that or ever mentioned that just blows my mind. Because yeah, these songs don't sound like Beheaded, because if they did, they would kick ass. But the thing is that like you throw these clean vocals on. And they sound okay. Not I isn't terrible on that, but when you get to Undying, the fucking overindulgence of that chorus, just I can't get past how kind of douchey it comes off. Like it really does. Like the shining lights will guide our way. It's like I want to be Howard Jones so bad. Is what I hear whenever I hear that chorus.
You, sir, are Ryan Clark. You are not Howard Jones.
This is just where it started for me. I apologize if I'm coming off a little strong, but
well, I mean, no, that's your point of view. And that's fine. I just mean it because I know Joe likes this, but there's plenty of stuff that I know that I like that everybody else looks at me like you're fucking stupid. So.
Demon Hunter.
Well, Jeff, everybody that's bad has a good album.
I have such a love-hate.
Even though that album is still shit in comparison to all other bands. It's not an issue. It's a fact. It's like, it's still bullshit. It just happens to be the best smelling pile of bullshit this band can create.
It's your bullshit. You like this bullshit. I get it. I mean, it's fine. I like stuff that I like. Shogun by Trivium. So there you go. There's my bullshit right there.
Okay. I like the Fifth Element. There's my bullshit right there. There are no traditional metal influences on this other than the fact that they did a cover of the Prong song, Snap Your Finger, Snap Your Neck, which is actually my favorite track on this album because it's aggressive. It doesn't have the bullshit, overindulgent, clean vocals on it. It is a pretty straight cover of Snap Your Finger, Snap Your Neck that's beefed up a little bit, and I loved that. Me and Buddy used to do a radio show from midnight to 2 a.m. and we had this guy that used to call us. He called us every single night and request that song, and he told us why. At one point, he said that he had just recently been in an accident of some kind, where he had been in a neck brace for, I think, something like 2-3 months. And so he listened to our show every night, and he would call in and request "Snap Your Fingers, Snap Your Neck," which was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed playing that song for him. But, I mean, for me, there's just not a whole lot else to like on this record. I mean, I think a lot of the songs run together. I remember that song "Fire to My Soul" being pretty cool in like a pop rock kind of way. Because, I mean, I'm not immune to a catchy chorus, but, you know, that's just all it was. It just kind of hit me like a wet napkin against a wall, you know? It wasn't the crushing death blow that I kind of thought that the band was going to pull off when they were talking about getting into more traditional metal. Because this is formulaic, watered down metalcore. This isn't even like As I Lay Dying level generic metalcore. This is very watered down, so that people that aren't into extreme metal would listen to it and be like, this is pretty good. Because you look at Demon Hunter's history, and really, they're not wrong for going in a softer direction at times, because their biggest singles are always the power ballads. Those are the songs that are always going to get played on Christian rock radio, and they had a couple of them on this record. They had the Tide Began to Rise was one, which I actually liked more, and then the other one was called 1000 Apologies, which might have the lamest sounding fucking chorus I have ever heard on a fucking Solid State Records release.
So can I just copy and paste everything you just said into the next record and say this is also the response for Storm the Gates of Hell?
I got a whole nother line of bullshit for that record.
So did they. Actually, it was the same line of bullshit. Again.
Worth noting, I do have the triptych on vinyl.
Does it sound as amazing as it does on CD?
It sounds identical to how it sounds on CD. I wonder why that is. But it actually comes on 2 LPs that are ox blood red. And again, Demon Hunter is all about the image, because the artwork on triptych is awesome. And there was like 4 variant covers. That's when everybody started calling. Yeah, that's when everybody started calling him Money Hunter, because they wanted everybody. This was the beginning of the Demon Hunter would release a standard edition of an album, and then they would release a deluxe edition of the album with a couple extra tracks, and then they would sell you like a holy fucking shit edition, which had like a DVD, extra tracks. Like I'll get into it on Storm the Gates of Hell, but I definitely have had a love-hate relationship with this band, because if I hated them as much as I'm saying I do, then why would I have continued through their entire discography up to this point?
Yeah, as I say, because it's not like you don't know an awful lot about it. I kind of equate like what they do with the limited edition kind of stuff, like with video games. So you got like the regular edition and the silver edition and the ultimate edition. And they used to do the same thing with, like, you know, alternate covers with comic books. I mean, this stuff's been around for a while. They're just, you know, they're putting it out for the hardcore fans. They know they can. That's their whales. They're gonna get that extra buck out of them.
Yeah, I'm just used to that. Yeah, I mean, I'm just not. I'm used to that now, but back when stuff was coming out, it was still kind of new to me. A band would put out an album and that would be it. But I guess I stuck with them for the same reason I stuck with In Flames for as long as I did, was because
you had hope.
I just thought that maybe something would be different. So, like, I was kind of like, oh, this band sucks balls after Triptych, and didn't pay much more attention to them. But the hype machine eventually got to me, and I listened to the opening single for their new album, which was called Storm the Gates of Hell. And I thought, holy shit, they're actually hunting demons again. This is like the same reaction I had to Mudvayne when I heard Determined, and I thought, okay, I think this is going to be okay. Why I didn't learn my lesson then, I don't know, but for some reason I was like, I'm going to give this record a chance, because for opening song, Storm the Gates of Hell is badass. Ryan Clark sounds more aggressive. There's no clean vocals. It's just like a punk song, basically, just goes. It's like the closest thing to actual hardcore that we've heard from Demon Hunter, besides maybe Beheaded. You know, like, it is actually really aggressive. he's got this really like a little tingle runs down my spine when he's like, hell hath no fury at all. And it just, you get this image of just like these buff dudes cutting demons. And if you ever played Darksiders, that's what it feels like, Darksiders, you know, or Diablo, or, you know. But no, like that's just it though. Like, I thought, okay, they realized what they did to piss me off on the last record, so they're going to try to fix it. And then I listened to the rest of it.
They got you, didn't they?
They got me.
So what about 16? The song 16.
Well, let's talk about Lead Us Home for a second.
Okay. You got it.
Starts off relatively normal. And then, oh God, this chorus. Self-indulgent? Like you're gonna extend out the word home over like 5 fucking bars. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, come on, you're not that good of a singer. But on this record, it was different because he starts hitting notes that there's no fucking way that the same guy that was on the first record is hitting these notes. Which is whenever I was like, I wonder how many times it took him to try that in the studio before he got it just right. And then I saw the band live, and I realized it must have been a lot of fucking tries.
About as many tries as Howard Jones. He really did want to be Howard Jones, didn't he?
He did. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, Killswitch during this era was unstoppable. You know, so I mean, it makes...
But Howard was not great live.
It makes it... Well, Howard wasn't amazing live either, but he was better than Ryan Clark. But, I mean, I give Ryan Clark credit for going out and trying to belt it out anyway live. They could have done backing tracks. He legitimately tried his best to do it live. But nothing about this sounds real. Like, to the untrained ear, you're like, oh, he's a really good singer. But, like, the more you listen to it, the more you start realizing that there's not a lot of humanity in it. Especially, like, with the second part of that chorus where he's, like, he's out in space as far as his pitch goes. And it just doesn't... It doesn't sound real. It doesn't sound genuine. Like that you could make that transition in real life. I mean, there are singers that can do it, but they're like above and beyond what most singers are. And I haven't seen that from Ryan Clark yet. And for some reason, he also really likes to deepen his voice and talk like this a lot. You know, like, and it was cool, and it was like Hell Hath No Fury at all. But like when he kept doing it, I was kind of like,
because I'm a tough guy with a bald
okay,
head
dude.
and a big
Hey, Ryan
beard.
Clark's here, Dan.
yeah. And they've got this really weird thing that they repeat all the time on their song, that shit that they do on every fucking song. And I'm like, dude, I get it. That's your flourish or whatever. That's I guess how people know they're listening to Demon Hunter. Like, I don't know what it is, but holy shit, just stop it. Because it's getting old. And especially now, you're later on in their career and they're still doing it, and like it's not even the same guitarist. So if that was supposed to be somebody's signature sound, I mean, I know Ryan Clark writes a lot of the riffs, so maybe it's him, but it's mind-boggling to me that they fall back on that so much. But yeah, let's talk about 16. 16 was a slightly higher note for me.
And could it be because of Bruce?
Because they've got Bruce Fitzhugh of Living Sacrifice on it. And if you thought that Ryan Clark's extreme vocals were good,
Ladies and gentlemen,
it's because you hadn't heard Living Sacrifice in a while.
The teacher is in.
Or you hadn't seen Living Sacrifice before, or you didn't know about that band. But to hear Bruce Fitzhugh be the counterpoint against Ryan Clark's extreme vocals, there is no contest.
Yeah, the balance of power has shifted.
Ryan is talking gruffly, and it's turned way up. Bruce Fitzhugh sounds like a fucking demon. We're going to get into another guest vocalist that has the same effect on the next album, but
oh, yeah.
This is absolutely the first moment where you're like, maybe this Demon Hunter band isn't as badass as I thought they were. And again, it's all about the hype because, again, this album, great title, great cover artwork, great image of the band. They have a really good stage show and image that they sell that is absolutely more than 60% of the experience. The music is just there to complement the image. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here is that if you are a serious metal fan, Demon Hunter is not going to be your bag. And it couldn't be more apparent on this when you have someone like Bruce Fitzhugh that doesn't really need to be explained. You know what I mean? Like, the guy's a monster. We've talked about that already. And then he somehow ruins what I'm getting. Because, like, when Fitzhugh is screaming on this song, I am in the pocket. I'm all about it. And then Clark comes in with a super indulgent masturbation chorus that just
ruins it.
It ruins it completely. And I just have so much trouble with it. And let's talk about that intro for a second. Okay, so they have, like, the orchestral arrangement over top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that sounds pretty okay, pretty cool.
Yeah, I dug it.
But then they come into the... Like, it just sounds like they're doing the metal gallop, but there's nothing behind it. It's, like, completely plastic. Like, I can't, like... There's no aggression behind it at all, which is another reason why I think that Fitzhugh stands out so much on this song, because he is literally the only aggression on the track. He sounds so good. I'm hearing him on the headphones now.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it, man?
It really is. And what's funny is I actually saw the band. So they did a tour called Stronger Than Hell, and Living Sacrifice had returned from. They had broke up, and then they came back when Demon Hunter called them up and was like, "Dude, you guys might actually start being able to make money if we take you out on tour," you know. And so they did. And I remember Living Sacrifice coming out and just blowing the whole place away. Like, people couldn't believe it. Everybody's there to see Demon Hunter, which is supposed to be the badass metal band on display, but Living Sacrifice just is such a great band anyway that they brought it to a whole different level than what Demon Hunter was bringing. It was interesting seeing how when they first came out, Bruce was like, "Does anybody here know who we are?" You know, and
Dan's going, "Yeah!"
And they proceeded to
well, that one guy did.
Yeah, it was just that one guy, Dan, and
Buddy was there too.
Oh, okay, Buddy.
Yeah, and so yeah, you know, me and Buddy were psyched, but I mean, it was funny seeing the reaction from the fans, and then so nobody really reacted to Living Sacrifice at first, but then when Demon Hunter came on, and they played 16. Bruce comes walking up on the stage to, like, the biggest applause. Like, literally, there was not that much applause for when Demon Hunter came out initially. And they opened the show with Storm the Gates of Hell. I mean, everybody was pretty amped, but not as amped as they were when they saw Bruce on the stage again. And I thought that was really interesting and really indicative of where we're at as far as that Christian metal thing goes.
More style than substance.
Absolutely.
Is where we're at.
My name is Ryan Clark of the band Demon Hunter. We're looking for demons because we're Demon Hunter. Hi, I'm Bruce Fitzhugh from Living Sacrifice. We found one!
Well, I think even I got wrapped up in the hype a little bit. Because for the most part, when I was there at the show watching the band play, it's like I was surrounded by these huge speakers that had the Demon Hunter logo on them. Everybody in the band is wearing black, and, you know, Ryan Clark's got the beard. The beard is like a member of the band.
Yeah.
And it was such a huge deal.
Yeah, I know you've been on the hype train. I mean, we're still a couple albums away, but whenever True Defiance came out, you were texting me about it whenever it came out, and you're like, "Dude, check this out." And I'm like, it's okay.
The hype train is the fact that I want to like Demon Hunter.
Yeah.
Because I like a lot of bands that are like Demon Hunter. But I don't know if I like Demon Hunter, and I think I got really into it. I bought the holy fucking shit edition of this, of Storm the Gates of Hell. It is like a gigantic rectangular box, which in
is
retrospect,
it a brown box?
In retrospect, why didn't they make that look like a coffin? But
right.
Whatever. It's got postcards in it. Postcards. Here, let me send you a Demon Hunter postcard, Jeff.
Wow.
It's got one with Ryan Clark on it. It's got all the members of the band on it, you know. And man, like I was really into it. It had a Demon Hunter necklace that I used to wear. Like it was like a sawed off demon horn. Because it was badass. And I can't stress this enough. The idea of Demon Hunter is badass.
Oh yeah.
You know, like it really is. It is. You know, and they're a band that you can show to your friends, and most of your friends will like it. You know, you get in a car with your buddies, and you put a Napalm Death record on, and they're like, "Get the fuck out of here!" But like, you put on Demon Hunter,
yeah,
and they're like, "This is really good." This is, you know, and to people that aren't into metal, I'm so sorry, Jake, but people that aren't into metal are gonna hear this, and be like, this is the best metal I've ever heard. And they're not wrong. It is the best metal they have ever heard.
Yeah.
You know? And so, what do you do with this? Because this record is a little experimental, but I hear so much fakeness in it. The choruses have techno backtracks on them. We're listening to Follow the Wolves now, and that song is really just... it's really catchy. I mean, I can't deny that. But it's just not what if I want to listen to this badass band, and I think sometimes the music doesn't match up with the idea of this being a badass band, you know? Because, like, you get to these songs and it's like, God, there's just so much clean singing, so much chorus, a little bit of screaming. But we can't talk about this record without talking about Fading Away. Fading Away was a big single on this record. It had a video and everything.
Ready or Not.
And, oh my God, dude, 2 minutes and 45 seconds into this song, Demon Hunter plays literally the worst breakdown I have ever heard on a Solid State Records release. I don't even know how it got past the producer, how it got past everybody, where they're like...
Well, the Clark brothers are the producer, so...
You guys want to...
That's your answer.
Right. Well, it's one of those, like, do you guys want to, like, maybe make that a little more complicated? Or do you want to add some diversity to it? And then they're like, okay, we got it. And you know what they do? Over it. I'm like, what the fuck? That is so disappointing. Can you imagine, like, being the only kid at the show that think that's a good breakdown and gets into the pit and start, like, what do you even do at that point? I mean, it's just so basic. That fucking snare makes me want to kill people, but not in a good way. Like, I'll do anything to make that sound stop because it's just so loud and it's over such basic of fucking breakdown I've ever heard. And it is very insulting to me that you thought that this was acceptable. Because again, you guys are supposed to be this super badass band that hunts demons. And like the thing is that like the other bands that these guys have been in were badass. So like it's like the whole Ghost thing, you know, where, you know, Tobias was in a great band called Repugnant, and then he does Ghost, and I'm like, what the fuck happened to your creativity? But, you know, I digress. That's just, I'm complaining about 30 seconds of audio on an album, so we'll just move past it. But this record had a song that was very Nickelback-y called Carry Me Down, which was, he's like, this song's about my funeral. It's about, you know, how I don't want people to be upset about my funeral. I think Ryan Clark's lyrics are basically okay. You know, like I don't really have a huge issue with what he says. Even at this point, this is 4 albums in, and I'm going back to the self-titled being like, this band is not even recognizable anymore from what they were on that first record. My Throat is an Open Grave is 10 times the song that Carry Me Down is. And I can't get past that. There's also another one, a track where he starts off doing clean vocals and they sound really bad, and I can't remember what that song was called because I always skip it.
Yeah, this is like
Incision.
There's a lot of skips going on now.
Wait for the World is a Thorn.
Oh God. Okay. So also worth mentioning that after Storm the Gates of Hell, Don Clark has actually exited the band. So now we only have one Clark brother carrying it, but it's the one that matters. It's the lead singer, so we're probably fine. The World is a Thorn, they tried to pull the same shit on us that they pulled with Triptych, but they did a little bit better of a job on it because they were like, we want to get back to our metal roots. And so they pulled some guests because they're pulling guests again. They've got Christian from Scar Symmetry.
And they got Speed from Soilwork. What could go wrong? Those are two of my favorite all-time vocalists.
What could go wrong,
Dan? What could go wrong? Well,
everything.
The first song isn't even a real song. I mean, it is, I guess, but Descending Upon Us. Ryan Clark tries to do some kind of guttural vocal on this, and it does not hit the mark at all. I don't know what he was doing with that. But, you know, we're back to La La La, you know, indulgent chorus land before we know it. And then there's a song on here called Life War. And
yeah, that's track 2.
It's a minute,
like 2 minutes.
It's a minute and 52 seconds, which warranted a music video.
Really?
And it's Ryan Clark in the shower.
Is he spanking it?
Which, don't get me wrong, he's a good-looking guy. But the thing is that he's like, that's not even a song. It's like he's just roughly yelling over a drum beat with like a choral thing behind it. Like it
seemed like every Demon Hunter song?
It seemed like an intro track or like an interlude, so I was kind of weirded out that like they felt that the song warranted a video. There is a point in the video where somebody punches Ryan Clark in the face, and I'm like, well, thanks for that. but yeah, like this is again, this is a super indulgent, chorus-laden, radio rock seeking type of album, and it's like, yeah, why are you guys being assholes and faulting it for that? Because this is fucking Demon Hunter. That's where I'm having trouble. I see the potential in this band's image, and what I actually end up getting never lives up to it. So let's talk about Collapsing, which, believe it or not, I actually kind of like.
Well, that's because Bjorn's Speed Strid is on it. How can you dislike anything he's on?
It's an earworm.
It is.
And at this point, we're 5 albums in, so I've heard a lot of bad Demon Hunter choruses now. So it was kind of nice hearing a good one.
Yeah, it also helps when you got somebody that shows you how to do the harsh vocals and clean singing and do it well.
Right. Well, and they do milk it to death, though.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's a great first 2 minutes of a song.
That's kind of the Soilwork way, though, too. I mean, they just do it better than Demon Hunter
Right,
does.
but Soilwork is a badass band.
Right.
Like, that's what I keep coming back to. And it's weird, too. Like, the drumming is, like, trying to be really extreme on this song, and it's, like, the radio single. Like, calm it the fuck down, dude. I know you're, like, trying to make up for that shit on Fading Away, but, I mean, come on, man. Let's take a breath here. And again, it's hard for me to hear Ryan Clark singing next to a vocalist that is superior to him. I think Ryan Clark almost sounds better on his own than he does.
He's not being outshined by a superior talent.
Yeah. And I mean, the guitar solo on the song is badass. It's the best Demon Hunter guitar solo by far. And yeah, this was a great track. It's weird that the radio single I thought was superior because on The World is a Thorn, Demon Hunter tries to experiment with extreme metal. So as much as I've been calling for that, I'm starting to realize that the reality of it isn't very appealing either. Ryan Clark does a lot of this on the title track, The World is a Thorn. He like tries to do this guttural thing, but it's not like a guttural death metal grunt. It's like he's doing his talking thing, and they've pitch shifted it down to try to sound badass.
Because they probably have.
Yeah. And I think they really thought that the World is a Thorn was going to be another Storm the Gates of Hell. Because that seemed like that's where they were going with it. But this song does not hit anywhere as hard as that one did. And I appreciate them experimenting, but like again, it's like, what do you do with this band? When they experiment, they suck, and when they're super formulaic, like that gets old too. So
I'm definitely off the train at this point. When you take the same ideas and put them in a different order and give me a new record, eventually I'm going to figure out that all you're doing is changing the order of delivery, and I'm going to call bullshit on that and say, well, I've got better versions of these 2 albums ago. Triptych is easy to make fun of, but the ideas are essentially the same and executed in a more enjoyable way. I don't know what this is. I've listened to this album a few times over the years, and I still don't know what it is.
This is one of their weaker albums, even though it did have some pretty good tracks on it. I mean, Just Breathe is amazing for one reason only.
Yeah, Christian,
again, it's like the Bruce Fitzhugh effect. Let's put Ryan Clark next to this vocalist that is essentially sounds like a demon. Like, I mean,
how can you go from sounding like a demon to an angel?
One.
We said Christian. Well, it's weird because, like we said, we said that Bruce Fitzhugh was so much more extreme, and then you have Christian, which, like sounds like even more so than Bruce. I mean, he's different than Bruce. They play different styles, but
yeah, his death growls are just like
But
the best
then
ever.
Christian one-ups him in the singing department too, because how could he not? That guy probably snores and it's beautiful. Like we talked about on the Scar Symmetry episode. I mean, this guy had to have 2 guys to replace him. I mean, this is just
he's insane.
He is. He's incredible.
He's got stuff like Scar Symmetry, Solution 45. But yeah, he also released a pop album because his clean vocals are just that fucking good.
Right. Well, and don't get me wrong, Ryan Clark, to his credit, is a good singer, but he just overdoes it. And then when he's going up against somebody like Christian, it's just really it's really jarring.
It's unfair to him. I feel bad for him because Christian's quite, dude's freaking legendary on the scene.
Right.
I'm like, you want somebody that can just do anything that you ask him to? I mean, that's Christian. I mean, he's essentially like the god of vocals when it comes to heavy music.
Yeah. It's hard after hearing that song to be like, yeah, so what the fuck was that shit? Yeah, like, I love how he ends it all. This isn't over. Like, it's just,
brother.
He does that shit so effortlessly, and I just can't get past it. I love that song, though, just because he's on it. And again, I think Demon Hunter the band is basically tight, pretty okay. But again, it's one of those moments where you're like, could Christian just sing full-time for Demon Hunter? Because that would be amazing,
Can
and
he
again,
just
it's
sing
like
full-time for everybody?
Right. But,
Welcome
that's
to Jeff's fantasy world.
Yes, it is.
that's that's this album, man. It just doesn't do it for me, and it has 2 really good songs on it that are carried 100% by guests. Like, unless anybody else has anything to say about that record, I mean, it's not. It wasn't even as good as Storm the Gates of Hell.
And now the record that we want to talk about.
Do we?
2012, True Defiance.
Why don't you guys talk about it?
It got me attention a little bit more than I was expecting. That doesn't necessarily mean it's like a fantastic album, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Well, Crucifix starts off, and they're like, we're going to do it this time, guys. We're going to do another Storm the Gates of Hell, and the song just does not even hit hard at all. Like, not really.
I remember being shocked hearing it, thinking there's no clean vocals.
Crucifix! Like, it's just, I don't know, man. I'm just not into when Demon Hunter tries to be badass. But, like, I want him to be badass. I'm an Unpleasable Metal fan, just in case you... Ladies and gentlemen, Unpleasable Metal fan.
The funny thing is I think my favorite track on this is, My Destiny.
Yeah, it was okay.
And that's mainly because the intro is like an As I Lay Dying clone.
Yep.
Like, I'm like, okay, well, like, the first time I heard it on I don't know if I heard this first, probably on Spotify, because you told me to check it out. I know this was that was one of the first 2 singles that was released, and I was like, oh, what happened here? I was like, is this another guest?
Well, My Destiny, Ryan Clark tries to venture into the black metal scream, which doesn't, I mean, your mileage may vary. It doesn't sound horrible, but it just sounds like Ryan Clark trying to do black metal vocals.
Yeah. Maybe I liked it because it's something a little different, and it worked.
I thought that song
better for me than what I'm used to having it work for me. The fact that I'm not bitching about it, that's a start.
Well, that song has an overindulgent, overly repetitive chorus. I don't think that the rest of the song matches up to the intensity of the first 30 seconds at all.
No, it does not.
They never really go back to it, and it just doesn't flow. It just becomes generic Demon Hunter song number 47 after that, And like, I'm tired of it.
The lower third of my playlist.
Now, there are other songs on this, like Wake and Godforsaken, where I actually think that Ryan Clark, his clean singing is scaled back a bit on this record. Not that he doesn't clean sing, because he does, but it's like he's more staying in his range now. Like, he's starting to realize that some of this shit's really hard to pull off live. And so you have songs that are sung a little bit better, a little bit deeper, a little bit gruffer, and I think it sounds better mixed with his gruff vocal. It has more unity. I guess, than what you had on like Triptych and Storm the Gates, where the clean stuff was like almost produced in a different studio than the rough stuff. Whereas there's a lot more unity in the sound on this record.
The old Immortium complex. Clean vocals are recorded in an entirely different studio.
The harmonizing on this is better than I was expecting too. Especially like, I guess, Wake, My Destiny, those are the ones that kind of thinking of right off the get-go that it was like, okay, that's not too bad. Because I like harmonizing vocals. I think it's fun.
Well, I think that there is a point, though, in a band's career where we've been beat down so much by kind of mediocre content. Like, I'll never say that a Demon Hunter album is pure shit, because it still has that commercial appeal. It's like calling Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory pure shit. You know, you may not enjoy it, but every single on that record was a single. You know, so there has to be something at least moderately appealing about it. But what gets me about this record is that, yes, it's better than The World is a Thorn, but it's almost like it's like having a kid that makes straight Fs, and then he gets a C+ and everybody pats him on the back.
You're doing better there, Dan.
It's not that he did better necessarily. It's just that he did better than he did last time. So I think we're so beat down at this point that like I'm starting to realize the strength of Demon Hunter is in its accessibility, and so I started viewing the band differently, because I think all the way through The World is a Thorn, I was always expecting the band to become what they were on the first album again, and they never have, and they never will. So I started just looking at the strength of the songs alone, and I wasn't necessarily impressed with the back catalog then, even looking at it with fresh eyes. Or ears, rather. But I did notice on True Defiance that the songs were better written than they had been on The World is a Thorn. And it's all the band this time. It's not, reliant on some prolific vocalist to come in and save the day, And so I think they did pretty good on this one. I'll give it a C- instead of an F. So
you did good in art class, boys. But your band grade needs to come up a little bit.
Yeah, you need. You showed up in. Showed up for gym class and played dodgeball every day. So here's your C-, fucker.
Yeah, it's their best album since their first two, in my opinion.
Really?
Yep. But that's not saying much.
I'm going to disagree with you for the next album. So again, it's Demon Hunter. There's another album.
It's called The Extremist.
Let's get that hype train going.
Getting worn out, man.
I've been off the train for a while. I came back for True Defiance, but now I'm like, yeah, just let me out here, guys.
I kind of drank the Flavor Aid with Extremist.
Did you?
You said it earlier, though. I want to like Demon Hunter.
That's why I always check out the new album.
But I want to like them.
When they put a newer album out, I'll check that out too.
See, I didn't check out this one and the next until it was time to do this, because I was done after True Defiance. I was like, okay, I heard the single on this, and then I wasn't interested.
I love the opening track on Extremist, Death, because it's one of the first times in years that I've been like, that was pretty badass. Where he's like, who do you think I am? I am Death. And it was very different for Demon Hunter. I was pretty surprised. Now, don't get me wrong. This shit happened to me a couple albums ago, too. Okay.
Sad. I don't think you're really on board.
No, I am. For Extremists, for the most part. This is probably the Demon Hunter album I've listened to the most. If you were looking at my... If you were looking at my Google Play history, you would see, 10, 15, on the play counts. And, I remember I listened to this album a lot when I was playing Titan's Quest on Steam. I think the first song is strong. I really liked the layered vocals. Ryan Clark's not resorting to cheap tricks now to make himself sound heavier. He just screams harder, which is what you should do. And pro tip 101. And then Artificial Light starts, and even that song, don't get me wrong, it has an overindulgent chorus, but they've kind of messed with it a little bit. I liked the diversity of the vocals on this record, because it really, like, I don't appreciate the first few seconds where it's just like noodly guitar shit, but I thought this song was, it just had a very different structure than what we're no longer just copying the triptych.
Well, the
formula.
intro to this is like, it's like melodic death metal intro.
Right. And I think there was always, ever since True Defiance, they've been trying to at least rope in some of those more extreme metal fans, which, I mean, probably they didn't on this record, but I don't know. I just like this song. And even I Will Fail You reminded me a lot of My Throat is an Open Grave off of the first record. Because let's just get it out of the way now. This is a mostly clean vocal record. Death, he's really he's really powerful in. And then, I don't know. I just really liked this one, and I liked I Will Fail You. I liked the last one, Alive. Even though my wife told me that it was like the most Nickelback-y chorus she'd ever heard from this band. And she's not wrong, but somebody buys Nickelback albums, so whatever.
Well, more than just somebody, if we've looked at the record sales.
Yeah, those people who buy the Nickelback records, when they want to be edgy, they buy Demon Hunter records.
But here's the thing. You know how I'm always saying if you're going to make pop music, play good pop music? This is the first time where Demon Hunter actually did that part of it right, too. Because I think the issue with their popular sound and the reason why their biggest singles were the ballads was because they did the ballads really well, but I almost feel like these guys were a little bit too metal to pull off a purely good pop song when they started. I think they were all, yes, let's do the clean vocals, let's do all this. But I think that they were always aiming for something that they were never going to hit. Whereas once they got through True Defiance, they realized like they had a much better pop sensibility than they had previously. And so these songs actually hit better, hit harder than they would have, 10 years ago. And so these songs have a little bit more of a guitar flourish, and they have a little bit more emotion in the singing. And so they do connect with me. I liked Last One Alive. I liked Hell Don't Need Me. I liked that song. But the highlight track on this record for me is a song called Cross to Bear. There's a chorus on that one too, but it's not sung. It's all just screamed, "Not one of you bastards has a cross to bear." It's just it's one of the few moments that I'm like, this band is finally living up to their image. Because it's a badass song. It gives me the same feeling that I got from Beheaded back in the day when I heard it. Except now it's just the band. Again, they don't need some powerhouse vocalist to save it.
Maybe I should give this one another try.
It's a good record, man. It is. And it's, is it the metal opus that I wanted from Demon Hunter? Not really.
We're never going to get that.
I've gone to, but like, why not change my perspective on it a little bit? In the sense of being like, they are never going to achieve what my expectation is, because my expectation is the first two albums.
What's this? Well, if we're going to use that logic, then what about, In Flames?
I couldn't get past Anders' fucking voice, man.
I'm just playing devil's advocate, because I'm right with you. I mean, his voice is just god awful. But I just don't like
because In Flames was trying to sell it like they were doing the same shit that they had always been doing, and they weren't. And Demon Hunter, yeah. I got the same. I mean, I've got kind of the same shit for Ryan Clark. Did you do me wrong? Yeah. Did you lie to my face? Yeah. Did you tell me for years that you were going to deliver this amazing thing that you didn't deliver? But, again, it's not all about me. There's a lot of people that love Demon Hunter. And, I can't fault those people for liking something. All I have to say is, hey, man, if you're into this heavy stuff, maybe there's better stuff out there you should check out.
Yeah, I guess. All right, let's use a beer analogy. It's like whenever somebody, all they do is they drink Bud Light and Bud Select, and they want to get something that's a little darker and a little heavier, and they think that they're doing awesome by drinking Amberbach.
I'm drinking Amberbach, bitches.
Yeah, when they should be drinking, Coffee Imperial Stout from Narrow Gauge Brewery.
Right.
That That's some dark, heavy beer for you right there. And I think that's part of our problem. They're a gateway, and we just have traversed so far past that gateway that it's ridiculous to us now in most instances. And that's the reason why we're harping on, Demon Hunter as much as we are. They're a gateway band. That this is a band for people who are just starting to get into metal, that are kind of trying to get their feet wet, trying to get an idea, of what a heavy sound sounds like. It doesn't mean that that the person who's listening to Demon Hunter, sucks with their music choices. It's just that they're discovering, and they're fine for what they are, which is just a band for you to learn and kind of get an idea of what metal is. But if you are obsessed with metal and you record a metal podcast and you essentially listen to metal music all the time, Demon Hunter is not gonna cut it for you. That's just really what it comes down to. And I think we've been harsh on them because that's just our job. I don't want to make it a total shit fest.
Well, it's not our job to be harsh. It's our job to be critical because we enjoy this type of thing.
Well, and I've had a love-hate relationship with this band from the beginning, but it wasn't until I went back and listened to it over the course of the week that I was like, well, I'm giving this band a free pass on stuff that I have not given other bands a free pass on, which is why coming into this, as hot as I did, had a lot more to do with the fact that I kind of had warm feelings about Demon Hunter. And then when I actually listened to what the product was, again, with a little bit more trained ear and a little bit more understanding of what was going on, I started realizing that, like, hey, man, this chorus is a direct lift from this song, and this verse is exactly the same as previous songs, or this runs together. And I didn't set out to be harsh; it just kind of
happened.
And so we still have another album left.
Right. I don't think the fact that we listened to Demon Hunter and Gojira in back-to-back weeks is helping Demon Hunter's case either.
It's not. I mean, we did it close enough to New Metal May to where I was kind of in the mindset. But man, Outlive. So this is the most recent Demon Hunter album.
It's garbage.
It's not great. It's actually one of their highest selling albums. But like all of the stuff that I said, so clearly we don't know anything.
Yeah.
But what I said was, or what I read originally was that Demon Hunter posts on their Facebook like, hey, we are sharpening our knives. That's how they actually phrased it. We are sharpening our knives, and we are working on a new album that's going to be called Outlive. Now, don't get me wrong. Ryan Clark did a bunch of interviews prior to this, and he did say that the album was going to be a majority of clean vocals. So at least this time he was more honest with us going in about what we were going to get. But I never thought in a million years that Demon Hunter was going to go, because like I said, I changed my outlook on Extremist, and I found a lot to like about that record because I changed my outlook a little bit, But I couldn't get behind this because I never thought in a million years that Demon Hunter was going to just full-on go rock. I joke about it. I'm like, oh, this is basically just a rock band, especially when you've been listening to fucking Death Grind, in between sessions. Everything that Demon Hunter puts out sounds like fucking Hootie and the Blowfish, But like this, Trying Times is a overindulgent intro song.
Don't even focus on track by track. The album is overindulgent.
Full on, yeah. Like, how we were talking about how certain albums sounded like they were recorded, like the cleans were recorded in a different studio. Well, this whole album is recorded in the clean studio. There's a song called Jesus Wept that is supposed to be really badass, and it's okay. It's no Storm the Gates of Hell. It's definitely not Beheaded. But man, there's no aggression in the aggressive parts. Like your chorus. So like, okay, fucking guitarist plays an intro riff and then lets it ring out, and your fucking verse starts during the ring out. What the fuck is that? Like, everything that I didn't like about the band is back on this record. The pitch shifted vocals, a kick drum that is so fucking digitized that it sounds like somebody is fucking tapping their fingers on a thin piece of candy wrapper. I can't be a metal fan and complain about clickiness and double bass too much, but like when you guys have had records out where the double bass sounded so much better than it does here, and again, it doesn't sound real.
You know, the interesting thing is Aaron Sprinkle has been the producer on essentially every album that they've had. So I don't know if there's a different sound engineer or what's going on, but like you said, it's thin and tinny and just lacking of substance.
It's like if you took away all the effects that are on all of this. You take away the effects that are on the vocals. You take away the layered vocals, like the layered singing, and you strip this album all the way to its bare bones. There's almost nothing there.
Yeah, it's like whenever you find out who the great and powerful Oz is, and you're like, oh, he's just a shitty old man. He's not some all-powerful being.
I don't have a lot to say about it. I went into Extreme because I was like, I dug Extremist. So even if the entire next album is all clean vocals, I'm not superficial enough to say, oh, this is going to suck. Because it didn't suck when Catatonia did it. It didn't suck when Opeth did it. Just because a band doesn't want to scream all the time isn't a bad thing in and of itself. But I just don't... I don't hear the sincerity in this record that I heard in Extremist. Everything just seems so overproduced and so plotting. Because you know what this reminds me a lot of? The New Game by Mudvayne.
And that was, 5 years before this?
Yes.
It definitely sounds to me like a record that should have been recorded 10 years ago.
Well, I've always felt that Demon Hunter was behind the times, but that's Christian music, right?
I feel like in 2018, the general populace has started to really grasp what a well-produced record should sound like. We had that little bit with over-digitalization, especially with vocals, and people are starting to actually listen to real music again. And then to hear an album that sounds like this, you really are banking on your fans latching on to that sound, the Demon Hunter sound. I don't think Demon Hunter would be able to put out an album that sounds like a modern record, because I think, much like listening to Tool, if you play it on a piano, you start to realize that there's nothing there. It's all hype. So part of what the appeal is supposed to be with Demon Hunter is how the record sounds. And it's not enough for me to get on board. Either you can't do better or you're not trying. I've already got this album in another form. It's called The Triptych.
Oh, The Triptych's way better than this. By far. So, I mean, that's Demon Hunter, guys.
Fake it till you make it. Yep.
Yeah.
I know that's Jeff's final thoughts.
It worked for him.
Well, it didn't work for me. Which is, everybody that produces an album ever just, does it just to hear what Dan Terry thinks about it. But,
ain't all Danny Terry about it.
Right. But, I don't know, man. I want to like Demon Hunter. I still want to like Demon Hunter. I got really sucked in with that, Demon Hunter, Demon Skull with a bullet hole through it. I was like, this is it. This is the next evolution of Living Sacrifice, because Living Sacrifice kind of was gone when Demon Hunter kind of showed up, so they were considered a torchbearer.
Fill the void. Yeah, I don't give a shit anymore about them.
And they did not fill the void.
There's some training for Utopia, Dan. How you feel now?
I feel so much better.
So what is your album of the week?
Oh, man. My album of the week. Let's go with Throwing a Wrench in the American Music Machine by Training for Utopia.
Nice.
Jeff, what about you?
Matriarch by Veil of Maya.
Good one. Great band. A lot better than this shit.
I was digging through the shoebox earlier today, and I came across Seven System, Hope Arises.
Oh, see, that's how you do melodic metal right. There's a song on that CD where he's all like, at night I cry when I see the things that I've done. And me and my buddy Mike changed the lyrics to that song to, at night I cry when I see the things that Joe's done.
Well, I mean, shit happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you dig a hole.
And you bury demons in it.
And on that note, this has been episode 68 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion, and please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Give me your buddy.